Hello everyone, welcome to a second thoughts overview of Miao Ying of Grand Cathay. As it is recurrent in these episodes, I went through the initial turns and observed the victory conditions, starting location, diplomacy mechanics, buildings, units, etc. I took my own conclusions about how the faction plays out, their strengths and weaknesses, so later in the video I also have some army compositions for you guys. This is a brief overview, it should not be considered a fully in-depth guide, although it will help you, and please do comment below with your thoughts. Without further ado, let's go play with Miao Ying. For your short victory conditions, it is rather easy. You need to control the following 6 provinces. As you can see here, they're pretty much the nearby ones. And then you need to control the bastion. Very straightforward. Rather easy, actually, one of the easiest ones. You also need to occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. Achieving this, the reward is a hero capacity +3 for all heroes. Granted, you can only recruit 2 hero types, basically a melee hero and... there we go, a melee hero and, a caster. In essence, that's what they are. But still it helps, especially in the early game, to avoid having to build too many buildings to get hero slots. In terms of the long victory conditions, things change a little bit. You need to achieve the short one, occupy, loot, raise or sack 70 different settlements, and then to destroy some of the following factions. Some rebels from Cathay, it's fine. I think we can do this very easily. Puppets of Misrule, of course, village is pretty easy. But then you need the Heralds of the Tempest, which are located quite far away, considering that you have to do like this to even meet them, or going around the mountains. It's pretty far away. They may not even move towards you, which is crazy. And then the Blessed Dread, that's fine, and Clan Eshin here. So the issue is that there's several enemies and all spread out, they all surround you, so this is going to take quite some time. Of course, you also need to maintain the bastion. Success, of course, will give you +10 hero recruit rank for all provinces. Now this ensures that when they enter your service, when your heroes enter your service, they're already fairly useful to you. Now, Miao Ying is the ruler of the northern provinces. She enjoys some decent buffs throughout the game. Corruption -2, it's always helpful. Ammunition +20% for all armies, that's excellent. It builds into the type of army compositions that we'll be seeing. But leadership +10% when fighting against demons of chaos, it's kind of negligible. This is more of a buff, more useful, let's say, for the Realms of Chaos campaign, which was based, of course, on... but for the Immortal Empires, perhaps a different buff would be in order. Now, in terms of climates, it's good and bad at the same time. It's average, let's say. Mostly, I'll show you here, mostly because the initial Cathayan provinces, of course, they're really rather large, and you'll have plenty of green and yellow, but any expansion suffers a lot, so you'll always go through unpleasant or unsuitable climate with the respective negative debuffs. As you can see there, basically, so most of the land is actually unpleasant for her. So it's not the easiest faction if you plan to do a full-on domination victory with. So your starting position is quite defensible, one of the strengths of this campaign. You're cornered into a nice niche, and you can defend it easily. Once you get the bastion up and running, then you only have one direction to defend. It is just a 2-settlement province, sure, but you also have some 3-settlement provinces nearby to conquer. The absence of a 4-settlement province is quite significant. It implies you might have to focus on hybrid provinces throughout the game. Typical expansions, as I said, should go into conquering the bastion, defending it against the north, and then you have the decision to make. Either you cross over and you try to finish off the chaos threats from the north, or you just try to conquer the full of the Cathayan lands. It's up to you, but that's mostly the 2 avenues for possible expansion. Grand Cathay is a fairly nice addition to the Order Tide factions, although it's a weird one because it's located so far away from the typical Order Tide, which is Empire, Kislev, High Elves, the Dwarves, Britonia, so you're pretty much alone here down in the east. So that may prove difficult, even if you want to become from the Order Tide. Perhaps some nearby neutral factions, such as the Ogres, such as the Vampire Counts, may provide some good alternatives as well. Enemies are pretty much anyone that is around you, really. Dark Elves over there, Skaven, Warriors of Chaos, and Norska, of course. Also the Ogres, the Vampire Counts, whoever is having a grudge with you at the time. In terms of outposts, some suggestions. So should you manage, of course, for instance, with the dwarves, some heavy infantry, heavy hitters, some cavalry from Kislev, some cavalry from the ogres if you manage, and if you get the Unholy Alliance, well, then some flyers and heavy cavalry from the vampire counts may prove very useful as well. Yin and Yang. Get used to those terms, you will see them everywhere. The harmony mechanic is interesting as it forces you to balance out most of the actions that you do, either with buildings, technology, characters, even events. So there's just not one way to do this, so your focus should be to at least try and predict how it will be in the next turn and adapt every turn to it. So as you can see, if it balances out to one side or another, then you have some negatives and some positives. However, once they are equal, you pretty much only have positives, which is really great. And you also get their armory ability with Ancestral Warriors, a summon, which is really nice for you, basically. Now, in terms, more on that a little bit when we've covered the buildings and the research. So let's go into the Ivory Road. Now, this is one of the best mechanics introduced in Warhammer 3, actually, because everyone loves it. So you can get basically a caravan that will give you a nice amount of income. You can select the route to increase that level of income as well, and of course dispatch with some more units. And this overall is just a nice buff for some good old old-fashioned gold for you. And it also provides you some vision on the lands far away, which is also interesting. In terms of the Bastion, is quite a simple mechanic, really. It spawns enemies to attack the wall over time. You build your defenses there wisely. Of course, I still haven't conquered it, but you build up the defenses, the garrison, and in essence, you have to endure whatever chaos threat comes in over your end. In terms of the compass, it's basically a set of buffs that you can choose for duration. Now, these are casualty replenishment and some defensive supplies, some growth possible with some income from all buildings, some control, and over this, when it is active, some winds of magic will be decreased, but also minus corruption, minus leadership for any armies in the region. The way it works is as soon as you direct, it cannot be changed for any 8 turns, and then you can have the ability to change it once more in 9 turns. So you always have to plan it out, and pretty much that's it. It's a very nice niche mechanic. Always every 9 turns you'll be able to change this one. A small note for Yin and Yang in armies. So as you can see here, it does provide you some passive abilities for, for the Yang in this case, for the presence of Yin units, and the other way around. Some buffs from the Yin units for the presence of Yang units. So always be sure to balance out also your army in order to imply a good balance and mix of units that will reinforce one another. As for edicts, we have a control and lesser chance of plague spreading, a research rate one, excellent one, a campaign movement range for the reduction for enemy armies, of course, corruption -5 in melee defense for your armies in the province, right, a defensive one basically, income from trade tariffs faction-wide, which is always nice, and recruitment cost and local recruitment capacity. This more for the local recruitment capacity is quite weak in terms of recruitment cost, but yeah. That's what we have in terms of edicts. As for army stances, we have the basic ones. Winds of Magic for 10% move range, then the typical camp and raid at 50% movement cost. And then we have the ambush stance as well for 25%. Nothing really out of the ordinary. The only special note being that edict for research and the lack for one of growth instead.
I think only of
Nangao has two special buildings, one focused mainly on siege defense, and the other is basically just a trade building. For a full military province, you will need 6 buildings, with 5 requiring a capital or province capital building. Although the third one, it's pretty cool. Some infantry, some anti-large, some crossbows, so it's nice, you know, to have easy access to that one, but still you'll most of the time require your tier 4 and 5 units to really shine in battle. Now, in terms of the infrastructure, it does follow the yin and yang, so you'll be required to keep an extra eye for this to balance out. Now, in terms of the yang, you do have a growth and construction cost reduction building, an income generation building, and also a control and recruit rank for peasant longspearmen and peasant archers units for all armies in the region. Now for Ying, you have slightly differences. Some growth and income from all buildings instead of the reduction cost, you see. We also have income generated, an income building, lesser income, but some income from trade tariffs as well. And we also have casualty replenishment rate and control. As you notice, kind of different options that you may have. Of course, be mindful of how these affect the overall yin and yang of your campaign. Finally, research is actually quite one of the amazing ones. It also follows the same principle of yin and yang, you know, so pretty much everything in over to the top is yang and below is yin, so it should be always a combination here as well. Most of them buff troops, buff stuff for the campaign, give some more harmony. Most of them give harmony, and it's really interesting because you'll arrive at the end and you'll note that in essence you will have your low quality troops being so powerful as well. The Cathayan armies really buff peasants to an ultimate degree. You know, you'll be able to field peasants and even jade warriors in elite armies if you wish. Of course, I won't show you those army compositions, just to show you with the more flashy units, but be mindful of that. Research will always give you great rewards in the end, especially for Grand Cathay. As you know by now, skills are divided into legendary lord specific ones, and then we have the yellow or combat ones, also with magic abilities, and then red line or army buffs, blue line or campaign buffs. In terms of Miao Ying, she gives decent bonuses for your campaign overall, and then she focuses mainly on the missile units, as you can see here. She's both a powerful melee lord and caster, so be sure to utilize both ends of it, or to just focus on one, whatever you choose. Red line, now it's quite expensive what you get out of it, so a bit of planning will help out in essence. I'll show you more in the army compositions. In terms of the blue line, it also may prove expensive. Nothing too out of the ordinary in the first part. Some attrition would be nice, but you know, some corruption is always nice, but still there are other sources for this. You do have upkeep reduction and casualty replenishment rate. The Great Bastion also gives you some upkeep along with some recruit rank and local recruitment capacity, but it may prove kind of wasteful in terms of the skill line. It's up to you, of course. Now in terms of other lords, so Lord Magistrates that you can get, and also the Dragon-Bladed Shogun. So basically a caster and a melee-focused Lord. Do be mindful of what they provide in terms of Yin and Yang, of course. That's always there. They do have some nice abilities that they can use. So all of that ensures that you can have some nice uses for both the Lord Magistrate and the Caster Lord as well. Now, a note that I would like to imply here is important, is that on both of your heroes, let me show you, oh, it's not here, it's here, there you go. Both hero units that you have, they lack replenishment, actually. They do increase income, increase mobility, but you lack a hero focus on replenishment, so you'll suffer a little bit on that regard. Now here we have all red line skills for the forces of Grand Cathay with the units that they affect. Now they are divided into mostly categories: all infantry, all missiles, artillery and different missiles, cavalry, etc. Now this costs you a few skill points, but the rewards for some are quite decent. Plenty of missile strength across the board. Now, Miao Ying herself, she buffs mostly missile troops overall, so of course you may want to focus on that. Just notice with these two army compositions that I've added, of course, how many red line skills you will need. Even for this, just 3 units, and you'll still need 15 skill points, so they're quite expensive to have. Of course, this is just a holding infantry, archers, and some cavalry to just have some fun and have less of a how to say, a micromanagement battle with like this over here. Now, as for other armies, you'll see an essence I'll focus a lot on Celestial Dragon Guards, but you can use Jade Warriors as well, and especially even Peasant for late game armies for sweeping and defending purposes, while your more elite armies take care of the powerful enemies. Now those red line skill points, they're actually quite expensive, so make them count as well. As an overview, whenever you are in our harmony imbalance, you have quite some nice buffs that help throughout. Even when you're not, you still have quite some decent ones. So the faction has overall amazing synergy potential when you do manage this balance. Everything in this campaign actually does one thing. It gives you the sense that your actions do take part in a type of greater plan. I love that feeling. It's very addicting. One of the probably easier factions to start with, but harder to master. It does bring a good point to take this a bit slow and improve on it based on your conclusions. As for your army, it's mostly good holding infantry, great missiles and artillery, good flying units, good single entity, good magic users, average melee capabilities, and somewhat weak in anti-large, especially outside of the infantry. Now replenishment is rather average. Buildings under the sources should be your best bet for most of the game. But still, I believe, as she's speaking right now, that it's now time to fight for Miao Ying.